it seems very, very narrow, in the sense that it seems that there is no possibility of remarriage, but there is possibility of divorce, because the verb that is used there is a verb that can mean separation but also divorce. And when we say separation, it seems a final separation. The verb means that. But Paul is quoting, is saying, in saying, not I, but the Lord. So it seems that he's quoting a saying of Jesus. It's saying that the believers can separate, can divorce, but not remarry. So that is a little bit, so how this can function. So I should live all my life divorced and so alone. Paul is saying that we need to understand why Paul is saying that. And probably Paul is saying that because if we really are believers and we had problems in our marriage and we couldn't find an agreement and our marriage is broken, and we are still believers, in the sense we still have faith in God and we think that God has the power to heal us, probably we need to be patient and let God operate in us, so that two believers can reconcile and join together. So this is the best hypothesis. But then there are facts and things that probably push us to never go back to that marriage, because we suffer so much, or there's been a behavior of the partner that was not really a Christian behavior. And so we can include whatever we want to include, so adultery or abuse. So then it's difficult. How can I go back there? And so it seems that Paul is saying, quoting Jesus, that there is no possibility of remarriage, as Jesus, as the Gospels say it. So in Mark and Matthew, we see that there is no possibility of there is possibility of divorce, but not remarriage, except for porneia in Matthew. Mark doesn't give this option. And probably Paul is, in the verse 15 of this passage, is giving another exception. And probably we may look at it as an exception, and so as a possibility of that. So the exception is that if the unbeliever wants to separate from you, wants to divorce from you, then let him do so. And so let be separated from him. And you, Paul says, the believer is not anymore enslaved, and so he can go, he can be in peace, go in peace. So what Paul is saying here, it seems that he's giving a possibility of remarriage, divorce and remarriage, because the unbeliever leaves, abandon, or divorce the believer. But who's the unbeliever? That's the question. So a careful study of this word seems that unbeliever is a person that actually is not, can be a non-Christian, so simply non-Christian, so it doesn't share the same faith, but also a person that apostate. So, or an hypocrite, in the sense that a person that says one thing and his behavior is another thing. So it seems that an unbeliever can be also a Christian in name, but not in action, in his behavior. Yes, it seems that Paul opens to that exception. So in the sense, when Paul says you are not anymore enslaved, this enslavement is referred to what? I personally understand this, and biblically I can show it in my paper, that Paul is using the same verbs that are present in the verse 10 and 11, are present in 15. So it seems that that enslavement, since Paul is expanding on this, I can say, saying of Jesus, it seems that the believer has the possibility to remarry in being free. So you're not anymore enslaved. So the believer should not be enslaved to what? To the fact to not marrying, not remarry, sorry, to not remarry. And Paul adds, and God will keep you in peace or bring you in peace. No? So what does it mean? So to be in peace in that sense means that you are free. You don't have any more an issue. You don't have any more this enslavement. So you are in peace with God, with yourself, and with your spouse that didn't want to be your spouse anymore.
So she can remarry.
She can remarry. I think that Paul is suggesting that she can remarry actually. Why Paul should penalize a victim. So I think that Paul is addressing this text to those people that have been victim of abuses or or behaviors, abandonment of unbelievers. And so Paul is actually saying, be in peace with God. God is giving you the possibility to be free. You are free. This means that they can remarry. It's not mandatory. So they can follow the advice of Paul in 7:9, I think, where he says that stay as I am, not married. No, so to be married is not mandatory. So they can, but they still have the possibility to remarry, according to what Paul and actually Jesus is saying. I think we can learn a lesson that marriage is an institution that God gave at the beginning in creation. So the ideal of marriage is there, is present. At the same time, Paul is addressing the issue of divorce and remarriage because of the fragility of marriage. And God acknowledges this fragility. He knows that we are broken people. We are under sin. So he knows that something can happen. And probably the divorce was not expected, and it happened. Actually, when we marry, we are not thinking about divorce. We are thinking to live happy forever. But then life, for many reasons, different reasons, I'm not judging the reasons, can bring us to live hard time. And so the marriage is fragile, so it can break. But we can still have God who can heal us if we are willing, if we are patient. If we think that probably is too much, we are free to think about remarriage. So this is the important thing. God is listening also to our will and not just imposing a rule on us. And God recognized that there are some broken people that can not anymore go back to what they had before. So, and I understand from that marriage is an institution of God, but at the same time is not sacramental, in the sense that marriage is being created for the goodness of man and women, and not as a rule, as an oppressing rule on people. With that, I'm not saying that we can do whatever we want. We want to divorce and now we divorce. No, because Paul is clear, he's saying that we should not divorce, because this is the best for us. So we should keep the marriage in a healthy state forever. That's his desire and God's plan for us. But there are exceptions. So I'm talking in this way just for exception, not for rules. The rules are very clear.